My name's Reese, and in this video, I wanted to share my approach to creating automated rules in Google Ads. Basically, I created rules in this fashion because I was finding that I was spending too much time making manual changes in my accounts and not really taking as much time to focus on the bigger picture that I wanted to. And so I found that this has really helped me save time on one-off manual tasks where my decision-making criteria was pretty similar each time, and also to make sure that I don't have to be as reactive as I used to be. So with all that said, let's get started. We're going to start off with the basics of how to create an automated rule in your account. And right now we're just in a demo account that I created for the sake of this video, so there are no live campaigns in here, but we can still look at exactly how to set up an automated rule. First, we're going to go here to Tools and Settings, and then we're going to go to Rules. Once we get right here into the rule settings, you'll see there's this plus sign, so we can click here to add a new rule, and you can see there's quite a few things that we can create our rules based off of. So everything from campaigns, ad groups, and keywords, all the way down to things as specific as income range. So most of my rules are going to typically revolve around campaigns, ad groups, and keywords. Right now, to get started, let's go ahead and look at a word for keywords, or a rule for keywords. Here, you can see that you can actually have a rule enable or pause keywords, change bids, even send an email if you want a rule to just notify you instead of making a change in your account. I know for a while when I was first getting started with rules, I typically had them send me an email because I was uncomfortable with a rule acting on my behalf, and I wanted to be the person who was in control of the account and just wanting to make sure the account wasn't getting away from me. But I found over time that trying to keep track of all those emails and making sure that I didn't lose anything just ended up getting kind of distracting over time. Once I realized that the decisions I was making in accounts were actually pretty consistent, then I became much more comfortable with having rules make changes for me, which ended up saving a lot more time than the notifications. Let's look at a rule for pausing keyword. Here, you can choose whether you want this to apply to just enabled keywords, paused and enabled, or if you happen to have campaigns in your account that are made for different types of goals, then you may want to only include specific campaigns in certain kinds of rules. In this case, we're going to assume that my goals are pretty consistent in terms of conversions and cost per conversion throughout the account, and because we're going to create a rule for pausing keywords, it doesn't really make sense to include paused keywords in that rule. So we're going to say all enabled, and in this case, let's say that we're running an e-commerce store and we know that our average order value, basically the amount of money that we make for most orders, is about $75. So in this case, let's just say that if we notice a keyword that spends $75 and doesn't have a single purchase attributed to it, then we want to pause that keyword. So in this case, our first condition is going to be cost. And so we're going to say cost is greater than 75. Let's assume that our conversions, we're only tracking purchases that are being made. So there's, of course, a bunch of other things that we could be tracking as conversions. In this case, let's just say that it's only going to be purchases. So we want to pause keywords that exceed our average order value without generating any purchases. We're going to say cost greater than 75 and conversions less than 1. And in terms of how often we want this rule to run, then I want to make sure that this rule is checking my account on a daily basis just to make sure that we're not letting any keywords spend wastefully. And in terms of time, I typically like to have most of my rules run, depending on the rule, around 8 a.m.-ish. And the reason why, there's actually two reasons. So one, I do like the effect of being able to already make some positive changes in an account right before I'm getting ready to start my workday. And two, if for whatever reason any of my rules misfire or apply to the wrong things, then I know that I'm already going to be at my computer pretty quickly. So if anything unintended does happen, I'll be able to reverse it pretty quickly. In terms of the time frame that we want our rule to run, in most of the accounts that I work with, the previous 30 days tends to be a good time frame. The trick here is that you don't want your time frame to be so short that when your account looks at your criteria, it's not going to catch any keywords. Because if you're only spending a few dollars a day, and you're looking over the last 7 days, then you might never have any keywords that spend more than $75 without converting in that time period, even though you may have plenty of keywords like that if you look at the past 60 or 90 days. You also don't want to go too long either. So if you're spending a little bit more money, but you're also making ongoing improvements, not just in the account, but also in terms of your offers, your user experience on the website, and also how easy you make it for people to buy from you, then you don't want to be looking at such a large time frame that keywords that might be spending less don't get a chance to improve with the rest of the changes you're making as time goes on. Keep in mind the amount that you're typically spending just to make sure that you're giving your rules the right amount of time to look at your account. In this case, we'll say that we only want emails if there are changes or errors. That just keeps your inbox a little bit cleaner. And then if you want to see which keywords would be affected, you can hit preview. So of course, there are no live campaigns or keywords in this account, so of course we're getting nothing. But let's look at what you can do if you want to see a rule that you're setting up, how it actually would affect campaigns and keywords in your account before you decide you want that rule. Now we're going to look at how to actually set up your automated rules in a real life account, because if you're setting up automated rules for the first time, you probably don't want to just create a couple of rules blindly and then see what it does to your account afterward. There's a second way that you can create automated rules, and you can see exactly the kinds of effects or the exact elements it's going to affect in your account before creating it. Let's pretty much take the same approach and again create an automated rule for keywords that spend more than $75 and don't have any conversions. So in this case, we're going to go down to the keywords tab over here. And then let's just see, we got some filters here. We'll reset these. So in this case, we'll do pretty much the same thing. We're going to say cost is greater than $75. And we're just setting a couple of filters here using the same criteria as our automated rule. And we're going to say conversions are less than 1. And so here, this gives us a list of a couple of keywords. And so we can see that, these are already paused since we've been running automated rules in this account. But if you haven't been, this gives you a chance to see everything that an automated rule would affect in your account. You can see how much it's spending before committing to that rule, and you can see, even if it is, if there's a different rule that you want to create, if there are potentially things that you may want to create a rule around but are actually bringing you conversions, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So if we wanted to create an automated rule from right here, then we can do that by clicking these 3 dots, and then we'll go to create an automated rule. So we'll say pause keywords, and personally I like creating rules this way because I do like to see exactly the kinds of changes an account is going to see before I put my rule into action. And 2, because it automatically populates those conditions here for us. So here we could say daily, and then we'll say 8 a.m., and then using data from the past 30 days. And then if we hit preview, these keywords are already paused anyway, so 0 keywords would change right now anyway. One more thing that I'll add here too is you might be wondering, if you're new to automated rules, how do you keep track of all the keywords that get paused over time from your automated rule? So the good news is it's pretty easy to set up a report around that if you want to keep track of it. So what we'll do is we're going to go to reports, and we'll just build a custom one from a table right here. And so what we can do is we'll say that we want to look at keywords, and then we'll just drag in a couple of metrics here, impressions, clicks, and ultimately we want to know, what I would want to know is, were these keywords that we're converting? And in this case, the only rule we've talked about so far is keywords that haven't converted. So it wouldn't be the case with the rule that we were just talking about. But what we'll do here, just to help us keep track, we'll say search keyword status is paused. So we'll apply that filter. So we'd only be looking at keywords that were paused in the last 30 days. And what you can do too is you can also sort these from high to low in terms of spend. That way you can just see the highest spending keywords that were paused in the last 30 days. So that is also a quick look at how you can set up automated rules in an account that's been running. The one automated rule that I think belongs in almost every e-commerce account is a rule to pause keywords that spend your average order value without making you any money in return. And so I know you might be thinking, what if I haven't given the algorithm enough time to learn? Or what if I just haven't tested the right ad enough? And that may very well be the case. But if you're a bootstrapping business, especially if you're still very early on, then I do think that there are bigger questions you can ask, and we'll get to those in just a second. At this point, though, the idea is that the best use of your budget? Instead of spending money on keywords that are basically spending the potential amount of money you could make in return for nothing, why not put that budget into other keywords that are performing better? And so this basically just acts as a backstop to make sure that your account doesn't slowly bleed profit over time. And I guarantee that, especially if you're used to going, in and out of your ad account multiple times per day, wondering if your keywords or your campaigns are spending more than they should, or wondering if your returns might be decreasing over time, and especially if any of those things have ever kept you up at night, automated rules are going to be a much better approach to that than staying up at night wondering how your account is doing or frantically checking in the middle of the day. Automated rules take all of the emotion out of the picture, and they focus on just a very specific set of criteria that you give them. And so you can make sure that the decisions you would normally make are always being executed. And that's why I'm a huge fan of them. Now, we're also going to get into some of those questions that you might have when an automated rule pauses a potentially relevant keyword. One of the first questions that you can ask yourself is, based on the price of this product, can I afford to pay this much per click? And so, as an example, let's just say that you have a $20 product and you're paying $1 per click. So in this case, let's just say that every 5% of people who click on your ads end up buying from you. So in this case, this means that you're paying $20 to get a purchase, and you're also spending $20 to get that purchase. The question there is, can you afford that? And it's not a trick question, because there actually may be cases where it makes sense to break even on that first purchase. But it's just about understanding and peeling back those layers in your own business, because there's two scenarios and there's a lot of room in between each one. But in the first one, let's just say that people spend $20 and that's it. That customer is done with you after that point for whatever reason. And so if you're not getting repeat purchases, and at that point, if you have to pay for your cost of goods, if you have to pay fulfillment fees and credit card fees and shipping on top of that, then you're definitely losing money on trying to acquire that customer at a break-even rate. In a second scenario, let's just say that people actually do continue to do business with you over a pretty long period of time. Let's just say that someone makes that first $20 purchase with you, but then they're on your email list and they love your brand, they like your product, and so over their lifetime, let's just say they buy from you at least 9 more times. So in this case, now that customer is worth $200 instead of $20, and you're only paying $20 to get them. So there could be other things, other costs in your business, but in most cases, that 10 to 1 lifetime return could be worth that customer acquisition cost. The second point here is, do I give people a good enough reason to buy from me compared to my competitors? And this is a question where you do have to be very honest with yourself. Take all of the emotion, take all of the ego out of the picture, and really ask yourself, do I have the most compelling or most interesting or best presented value proposition in some way? As an example, if you're saying, oh, this is the best product in its category or most convenient product in its category, then it's very likely not compelling to anyone. And the reason why is because saying that you're the best at something is a very vague value proposition. People aren't going to understand that. They want to know, why is this the best? Be specific with the benefits that you're offering people. And the second part of that convenience. In this day, where a lot of people have been Amazon Prime customers for a while, and it's very unlikely that what you're offering is more convenient than that. Amazon is built almost entirely on the notion of convenience. So again, be very specific about the value prop that you're offering, and the reason why that is so important is because that is going to affect your conversion rates, how often visitors to your site buy from you. And especially if you're trying to acquire new customers from a paid channel like Google Ads, these are people who are looking for a solution to something very quickly. That's why they're turning to search. And so if you're wasting a visitor's time by being vague, or by not offering something that seems truly unique and differentiated, then your cost to acquire those customers is going to be much more expensive than if you were to narrow down and get more specific about what you're really offering. The third question here, does my website make it easy to buy? And this is something that is probably even a little bit easier than drilling down on a very specific, concrete value proposition. This is things like, is my website loading fast enough? Do I give people easy payment options? Is my site's navigation straightforward and logical? In those cases, it's also good if you have competition, especially a lot of competition. You need to make sure that you're not doing anything that makes it harder to buy from you than what your competition is doing. One example that I'll give you right now that I've seen on plenty of e-commerce sites, if you're using Shopify, is using express checkout options like Apple Pay and PayPal. Those two alone are two of the most popular express payment options. A lot of times, well, actually mobile or desktop, people are using PayPal, and especially on iPhones, people are using Apple Pay. If you're not offering those options, then it's going to take someone longer to fill out the details of their name, their address, other things like that. And those things are much more difficult to type, even on a good smartphone like an iPhone 10 or more recent. Those are still more difficult to type than just doing a Touch ID or Face ID Apple Pay payment. I think recently of purchases I've made, and there was a case where I bought a necklace for my girlfriend. Compared to others that I was looking at, this merchant had Apple Pay, and it made it very simple for me to make that transaction. By the way, I'll give you a link. If you don't have Apple Pay turned on in your Shopify store, I'll post a link in the video description. That way you can go do that. Fourth, can I afford to grow at this rate based on the number of repeat purchases my customers make? And so we talked about this in the second question. If you're selling a replenishable product like coffee or tea or something like that, if it's a replenishable product or even skincare, for example, then people are typically going to buy more. But this is very important where you do have to understand your financials and also understand how customers buy from you over time. It's important in these cases to understand both your gross margins and also your average purchase frequency from customers, because this is a question that can affect you on both sides, both in terms of hurting your profitability or hurting your growth rate. So if you overestimate how often people buy from you, then that can hurt your profitability. But if you underestimate how often people buy from you and you're setting an artificially low goal for your customer acquisition cost, then that could actually be constraining your growth. If you think people only buy from you 2 or 3 times at the most, and they're actually buying from you 15 to 20 times, then if you're setting that low customer acquisition cost goal, you could actually be growing much more quickly. And of course, you might want to consider how often you actually recoup the money on those additional purchases. There's some deeper analysis there. But the reason why I think these 4 questions are so important, and again, not a completely comprehensive list of questions, these are bigger picture questions about the growth of your business and not whether you should continue to bid on an individual keyword. Keep these 4 questions in mind if an automated rule pauses a keyword based on criteria that you gave it. And again, always double check your automated rules to make sure that they're using the correct criteria, because not double checking that, if you accidentally run an automated rule incorrectly, then it's something you don't want for your account. But if it's using the criteria that you gave the rule, it's running correctly, then all emotion is taken out of the picture. So instead of saying like this keyword is relevant, ask yourself, is this actually am I giving the buyers, the people searching this keyword, the most relevant thing in the best possible way and making it easier for them to buy than anyone else? And so that'll ultimately determine whether you can actually acquire new customers at a reasonable rate from that keyword. So thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you want more videos like this. I plan on releasing more videos like this. So thanks again so much for watching. Please like and subscribe.